Breaking. The psychological siege of Downing Street has officially begun. And what we are witnessing right now is not just a political skirmish, it is the systematic dismantling of a prime minister on live television. The walls of number 10 are closing in. Keir Starmer is no longer governing, he is surviving, minute by agonizing minute, while Nigel Farage orchestrates a masterclass in political suffocation that has left the establishment paralyzed with fear. Westminster is burning, the corridors of power are choking on the smoke of a dying administration, and the man who was supposed to bring stability is presiding over a total, catastrophic meltdown. We are watching the real-time disintegration of authority, a spectacle of weakness so profound that veteran insiders are whispering that the damage is already irreversible. This is the end of the honeymoon. This is the beginning of the end of the narrative control. And you need to understand exactly how this happened, because the media is too terrified to tell you the full, unvarnished truth about the panic currently gripping the Labour Party.
Let me paint you a picture of the absolute toxicity flooding through Parliament right now. This isn't the usual rough and tumble of British politics. This is predatory. Nigel Farage has smelled blood in the water, and he is moving with a ferocity that has caught Starmer's team completely off guard. Sources deep inside the parliamentary estate describe an atmosphere of pure dread. Senior Labour figures are walking through the lobbies with their heads down, terrified to check their phones, knowing that every notification brings a fresh assault, a new headline, a new humiliation engineered by the reform leader. Farage isn't just debating policy, he is waging total psychological warfare. He has cornered the Prime Minister not by outvoting him in the Commons, but by outthinking him in the country. He has identified the vacuum of charisma at the heart of this government, and he is filling it with a relentless, populist fury that Starmer simply has no answer for. The Prime Minister tries to speak about GDP and growth forecasts, but Farage speaks about betrayal, about the border, about the visceral feeling that the country is being sold down the river. And the terrifying reality for the government is that the public is listening to Farage. The mechanism of this takedown is brutal in its simplicity. Farage has trapped Starmer in a validity trap. Every time the Prime Minister tries to ignore him, Farage paints it as cowardice. Every time Starmer engages, he elevates Farage to the status of a co-Prime Minister. It is a lose-lose scenario that is grinding the government's agenda to dust. Behind closed doors, the shouting matches in the strategy rooms of number 10 are reportedly becoming deafening. Advisors are blaming each other. Communications directors are resigning in spirit, if not in ink. They know they are losing the narrative war. They know that when Starmer appears on camera, he looks haunted, defensive, a man reading a script written by a committee, while Farage looks like he is speaking directly from the gut of the nation. This contrast is lethal. It is the difference between a lawyer reading a contract and a revolutionary reading a riot act. The British public, tired of robotic answers and managed decline, is being drawn to the heat of the fire Farage started, and Starmer is the one getting burned. But here is where the situation escalates from a political problem to a constitutional crisis. The authority of the Prime Minister is based on the perception of power, and that perception has shattered. When you lose control of the story, you lose control of the country. We are seeing a power drain unlike anything in modern history. Civil servants, those permanent fixtures of the state who usually keep their heads down, are leaking like a sieve. They sense the weakness at the top. They see a prime minister who is frozen, unable to make a decision without calculating how Farage will tear it apart. This paralysis is poisoning the entire machinery of government. Decisions are being delayed. Policies are being watered down. The bold vision promised during the election has evaporated, replaced by a desperate, flailing attempt to just get through the day without a disaster. But disasters are now the only thing on the menu. Farage is dictating the schedule. He announces a press conference and the government scrambles to respond. He releases a video and number 10 has to rewrite their entire grid for the week. The tail is wagging the dog, and the dog is terrified. The panic has seeped into the very DNA of the Labour backbenches. These are the MPs who rode a wave of anti-Tory sentiment into power, thinking they had 5 years of easy governance ahead of them. Now they are looking at their inboxes and seeing a deluge of fury. Their constituents aren't asking about the legislative agenda. They are repeating Nigel Farage's talking points word for word. This is the nightmare scenario for a new government. The opposition is defining the terms of reality. MPs are returning to Westminster from their constituencies shaken, telling the whips that the mood out there is ugly, that the people feel betrayed, that the change they voted for looks suspiciously like more of the same, only weaker. And Farage is there at every turn, amplifying that sense of betrayal, turning disappointment into rage. He is the conductor of a symphony of discontent, and the music is getting louder every single hour. Then comes the media fallout, which has turned catastrophic. The press pack, which usually gives a new prime minister a grace period, has turned savage. They smell the weakness. They see the fear in the eyes of the cabinet ministers sent out to defend the indefensible. Interviews have become blood sports. When a minister goes on the morning rounds to explain why the government is failing to control the borders or the economy, they are not just grilled, they are eviscerated. And every stumble, every pause, every stutter is clipped, packaged, and viralized by Farage's digital army within minutes. The speed of the news cycle has accelerated beyond the government's ability to cope. By the time Number 10 issues a clarification, the narrative has already traveled around the world 3 times. They are fighting a 21st century information war with 20th century tools, and they are being slaughtered. Farage knows this. He thrives on this. He understands that in the age of attention, the person who screams the loudest and points the finger with the most conviction wins. Starmer is still trying to play by the rules of parliamentary decorum, not realizing that the game has changed completely. The rules are gone, the arena is lawless, and he is unarmed. But the true horror for the establishment lies in the competence collapse. It isn't just that they are losing the argument, it's that they look incompetent while doing it. The government was supposed to be the grown-ups returning to the room. They were supposed to be the serious people. Yet, under Farage's relentless pressure, they look like amateurs. We are seeing U-turn after U-turn, frantic rewrites of policy, contradictory statements issued by different departments on the same day. It is a shambles, and every mistake feeds the beast. Farage points to the chaos and says, "Look at them. They don't know what they're doing. They lied to you." And the terrifying part for Starmer is that the evidence supports Farage. The public looks at the chaos and nods. The trust is gone. And once trust is gone in British politics, it never comes back. You cannot rebuild a skyscraper on quicksand, and right now the entire foundation of this government is liquefying under the heat of the assault. Let's go deeper into the psychology of the man at the center of this storm. Keir Starmer built his entire career on being the prosecutor, the man who asks the questions, the forensic analyst. But now he is in the dock. He is the one being cross-examined, and he has no defense. Farage has flipped the script. He has put the Prime Minister on trial for the crime of mediocrity, for the crime of betraying the working class, for the crime of being a hollow vessel for the establishment. And Starmer is cracking. You can see it in his body language, the tight jaw, the forced smile, the eyes that dart around the room looking for an exit that isn't there. He looks like a man who has realized, too late, that he is out of his depth. He is finding a populist insurgent who has nothing to lose, while he has everything to lose. Farage is playing with house money. Starmer is gambling with the nation's future. The stress is unimaginable. Rumors are swirling of late-night crisis meetings where the Prime Minister sits in silence, staring at the polling data that shows a straight line down, while his advisors scream at each other over who is to blame.
And what makes this worse, what makes it truly unforgivable, is the sheer predictability of it all. Everyone knew Farage wasn't going away. Everyone knew the anger in the country hadn't been resolved by the election. Yet Starmer acted as if winning the vote was the end of the story. He thought he could bore the country into submission. He thought he could manage the decline quietly. He was wrong. The country didn't want a manager. It wanted a leader. And in the absence of leadership from Number 10, Farage has stepped into the void. He is offering certainty in a time of chaos. He is offering a voice to the voiceless. It doesn't matter if you agree with him or not. What matters is that he is the only one generating kinetic energy in British politics. Starmer is static. Farage is dynamic. In physics and in politics, momentum wins. And right now, the momentum is hitting the Labour government with the force of a freight train. The betrayal of the ordinary voter is the central theme of this tragedy. People lent their votes to Labour not because they loved Starmer, but because they were desperate for competence. They wanted the lights to stay on, the hospitals to work, the borders to be secure. Instead, they have been given a soap opera of incompetence, starring a cast of politicians who seem to despise the very people they govern. Farage is exploiting this disconnect with surgical precision. He is telling the nurse, the truck driver, the small business owner, They are laughing at you. They don't care about you. They are terrified of me because I speak for you. It is a potent, intoxicating message. It bypasses the brain and hits the heart. It turns political apathy into political rage. And Starmer has no counter-narrative. He cannot say we are fixing it because nothing is getting fixed. He cannot say trust us because nobody does. He is disarmed. He is naked in the storm.
As we move into the darker phase of this meltdown, the whispers of a leadership challenge are starting to become audible conversations. The sharks in the Labour Party, the ambitious cabinet ministers, the bitter backbenchers, are watching the polling numbers and doing the math. They know that if this continues, they will be wiped out at the next election. They know that Starmer is becoming a toxic asset. Farage knows this too. He is taunting them. He is practically daring them to make a move. How long will you stick with the loser? He asks. How long will you let him drag you down? He is driving a wedge between the Prime Minister and his own party, splitting the wood until the axe goes right through. We are seeing the formation of factions, the plotting in tea rooms, the leaked WhatsApp messages, where MPs call the leadership hopeless and suicidal. The discipline that held the party together is fracturing. The fear of Farage is greater than the loyalty to Starmer. That is the tipping point. When fear outweighs loyalty, the coup is inevitable. The establishment is reacting the only way it knows how, by closing ranks and attacking the messenger. We are seeing a coordinated attempt by the legacy media and the political class to demonize Farage, to label him dangerous, to try and deplatform him. But this strategy is backfiring spectacularly. Every attack just proves his point. Every attempt to silence him just makes his megaphone louder. They are turning him into a martyr. They are validating his narrative that it is the people versus the elites. Starmer is trapped in the role of the elite enforcer, a role he plays all too well. He looks like the headmaster telling the students to be quiet, while Farage looks like the rebel leading the walkout. In the current anti-establishment mood of the West, the rebel always wins. The government is pouring gasoline on the fire by trying to suppress it. They don't understand that the old rules of gatekeeping are dead. You cannot censor your way out of a crisis of competence. You cannot banish a political force that represents millions of angry voters. But they are trying, and in doing so, they are sealing their own fate. And here is the most terrifying part for the future of the UK. The paralysis is spreading to the economy. Markets hate uncertainty. Investors are looking at the UK and seeing a government on the ropes, a prime minister who might not last the year, and a populist surge that could upend the entire political order. The pound is jittery. Investment is pausing. The Starmer stability that was promised to the City of London has turned into the Starmer stagnation. Business leaders are privately briefing that the government is uncontactable, that decisions are stuck in a bottleneck of panic at number 10. Farage is highlighting this economic damage, blaming the government's green policies, their tax hikes, their sheer inability to execute a plan. He is tying the cultural rot to the economic rot, creating a unified theory of failure that is impossible to argue against because the evidence is on the high street for everyone to see. Shops are closing, prices are rising, and the government is fighting a Twitter war with Nigel Farage instead of fixing the economy. It is a dereliction of duty on a historic scale. The climax of this narrative is approaching fast. We are heading towards a moment of total rupture. There will come a day, maybe next week, maybe next month, where Starmer simply cannot take another hit. A scandal will break, or a by-election will be lost, or a rebellion will erupt, and the dam will break. Farage is pushing for that moment. He is escalating the attacks daily, ramping up the pressure, waiting for the crack to turn into a chasm. The script is written. The ending is known. The only variable is time. How long can a man hold his breath underwater? How long can a government survive without the consent of the governed? The air is running out. The pressure is crushing, and the surface seems miles away. This isn't just about Keir Starmer anymore. This is about the viability of the entire centrist political project. If Starmer falls to Farage, it sends a signal to the world that the center cannot hold. It validates the populist uprising. It changes the course of British history. That is why the panic in Westminster is so visceral. They aren't just fighting for a prime minister. They are fighting for their survival as a ruling class, and they are losing.
They are losing because they have forgotten the golden rule of politics. You serve the people, or the people replace you. They forgot to serve. They treated the voters with contempt. And now, Nigel Farage is the instrument of the voters' revenge. It is a tragedy of hubris. It is a tragedy of arrogance. And the final act is going to be brutal. Look at the faces of the Labour front bench during Prime Minister's questions. Look at the fear. Look at the exhaustion. They know the game is up. They know the script has flipped. They are just going through the motions, waiting for the inevitable. The shouting from the opposition benches is louder. The cheers for the Prime Minister are quieter, more forced. The energy has left the building. It is a zombie government, walking dead, kept moving up only by the inertia of the system. But inertia is not enough to stop a landslide. And make no mistake, a landslide is coming. The ground is moving beneath our feet. The tectonic plates of British politics are shifting, and the earthquake is going to swallow this administration whole.
So where does this leave us? It leaves us in a state of national emergency. We have a government that cannot govern and an opposition that is preparing for war. We have a prime minister who is hiding and a populace who is hunting. The next few weeks will define the next decade. Will Starmer find a spine? Will he purge his team, reset his agenda, and fight back? Or will he continue to wither away, a victim of his own caution, until Farage finally lands the knockout blow? The evidence suggests the latter. The trajectory is set. The engine of this crisis is running at full speed, and the brakes have been cut. We are careening towards a cliff edge, and the driver is asleep at the wheel. This is the reality of the UK right now. Toxic, broken, leaderless. The illusion of stability has been shattered, the curtain has been pulled back, and what we see is a terrifying void where authority used to be. Nigel Farage has exposed the emptiness of the modern Labour Party, and he is filling that emptiness with his own ambition. The siege is over. The occupation has begun. The only question left is, when will the white flag be raised? When will the Prime Minister admit that he has lost control? The silence from Downing Street is deafening, but the roar from the country is getting louder. Stay tuned, because the final collapse isn't just a possibility anymore, it is a guarantee. And when it happens, remember who told you first. The clock is ticking. The meltdown is here. Is anyone actually in charge of Great Britain? The answer, terrifyingly, appears to be no.